There's a red ghetto spilling black blood over cracked concrete, chasing superfly dreams upstream, syrupy sweet, forever giving their souls to the penitentiary for keeps, seeking liberation from an oppressive social matrix where there is no fair trial because the judge is racist. It's hell here, and heaven's only glances, marijuana plants, food stamps, and welfare. In my observations, I see the black population plagued by miseducation, parole and probation, economic stagnation, too many facing incarceration. Politicians are filthy pheasants, laughing and laughing while our seeds return to the essence. During a recession, some seek Smith & Wessons, others digest the jewels and lessons, upholding the star and crescent. In a world of corruption, government increased jail constructions for social malfunctions, and schools lack proper instructions. Is it politics or politricks when 85% chasing kicks, chains, and whips, blacks killing blacks in the name of blood and crip? In this modern genocide, life and death are synthesized, images criminalized. I'm victimized by legitimized police homicide. Even if I'd tried, I doubt I'd have survived the 41 shots the night Amadou Diallo died. But the whole story's never told when my freedom stole, caught in the folds of a Rikers Island hold. Flashbacks, flashbacks. Flashbacks to the drug soul, chasing diamonds and gold. I behold through every hood I stroll. Shorty's lost in the cold, just a puppet of subtle mind control, acing out on his very first role. But the tables turn when the young teach the old. Revelation scroll.
Wow. What you've just heard is the voice of Damion Coppedge reading his own words. Thank you. How did you become a poet? Where did this come from?
Well, I've always had a fascination with words. When I was a small child in school, I was reading beyond the grade that I was in, and I used to take my aunt's books, and I would just take them late at night downstairs in the living room. Even before I really knew how to read, I would just look at the words. I thought it was fascinating to see, print on a page just looked so orderly to me. And then when I finally realized that those words had meaning, I began to look them up, like in the dictionary. And after a while, elementary school, I did a play, Langston Hughes' Mother to Son, and that was like one of my very first introductions into the power of poetry, and I started to look into it from there.
Well, what you do in that piece you just read us is really powerful because you express a lot of rage, but you do it in a way that with the rhythm and the repeating rhymes becomes art. So you've made art out of something that is really kind of horrible. If you could just kind of talk about that process, how you take rage and rather than, say, punching somebody in the face with a fist, you pick up a pen and make it a poem.
Well, there's a little backstory to that poem, so let me just take you back a little bit. I wrote that poem while I was incarcerated in Sing Sing Correctional Facility between the years of 2002 and 2005. I think maybe that was written maybe 2003 or 2005, and I was just caged in a cell, and one night on WBAI, some poets came on the radio, and I think they were called either the Spitfire Poets or something like that. And I heard it, and it was amazing to me. And I started to call other people down the gallery and tell them, "Hey, listen, man, turn on WBI. They have some real interesting poetry on." And I was sort of transfixed by how, out of being in a cell and, pretty much people thinking that I should be down and sad and, nobody wants to be in the cell, but when I heard these poetry, it just moved me. And then within that movement, I just picked my pen up and my paper, and I just started to try and create, along the themes of what I was feeling at that time. And, Amadou Diallo at that time, around that area of time frame, I'm not sure if I may be on or off with, the time, but it was still resonating what had happened to him. And then being in prison and having, a lot of abuse of authority and violence going on, it just kind of compelled my pen to move forward. And, I'm a strong believer that, creation comes, in times when you least expect it. It can't be forced. So, being in that circumstance, being in that situation, I felt compelled to create. And I think, that's just what I did. And I'm blessed that, people have, enjoyed it and looked into it as they have.
Yeah, well, I should let our listeners know the reason I was able to make this podcast with Damion Coppedge is through the late Peter Henner. And our longtime readers remember he was a Clarksville lawyer and an activist, and also did our chess column. And he had written about Damion because the two of them played a game of chess through the mail while Damion was in prison. And Peter Henner considered him a brilliant player. He went by you still do go by the name of Focus, is that right?
Yes.
How did that name come up, the name Focus?
Well, that's another interesting story. So, in prison you have like recreation time, and some prisoners go out, some prisoners they choose to stay back in their cell. Well, I have been bitten by the chess bug ever since I was 8 years old. My father taught me how to play the game, and I've been studying books like since the age of 14 up until now. I'm 43. I play at a club in Manhattan called the Forum. Shout out to the Forum. If anybody wants to come play chess there, they can look me up. But the name came about when I was outside in the rain and I'm playing chess, and some guys, I guess they were trying to call me and get my attention. And I was so transfixed in the position at the board, they just said that I was acting like I didn't hear them, and you ignoring us. You just so focused on the game, you don't hear anything, around you. And just started to call me Focus when they saw me outside playing chess. And, it started to stick. And, I actually made an acronym out of the name, and it stands for follow one course until successful. So, I just let the name stick with me. And it's also like a reminder when someone calls me that to pay attention.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. And I'm just impressed with the world of chess, which I know nothing about. But I went online to try to find out a little about you, and I came across this book by Tim Crothers that was made into a movie by Disney, The Queen of Katwe. And you appear in that book. Just for people that don't know the story, there was a young girl, she was 9 at the time, in Uganda. Fiona, how do you say her last name? Mutesi?
It's Phiona Mutesi.
Phiona Mutesi. And the two of you corresponded by mail, and in the book is a letter that you wrote to her, and I'm just going to read from some of that because I think it's just so telling to transcend worlds. Here you are in prison in the United States, and she's in her own kind of prison, really, poverty, a prison of poverty in Uganda, in the slums. And the author of the book writes, in setting up this letter in the book, Cotter writes that Coppedge had sent Fiona 3 chess books, a check for $25 that prompted her coach to open Fiona's very first bank account. And she went on to become an internationally known chess champion. But here is this letter that you wrote her that is in the book. Dear Fiona, I write to you happy to hear from you and your coach. I thought I would never get a letter back, and when I did, I smiled with excitement. Your letter was the very first one I received from my original home. I write to you and Robert, that's the coach, Robert Katande, I think you say his name. I write to you and Robert not only as a fellow student of chess, but also a brother in a distant land. Captured long ago were my ancestors, and as I descend from them, I'm delighted to reconnect with you as a friend and brother. I thank you for agreeing to play with me. I absolutely love everything about chess. I have a small library of chess books in my cell along with 2 chess sets made of plastic. My father taught me to play when I was 8 years old. I've been hooked since. I'm 34, so we know you wrote this 9 years ago, and I don't have much competition here in this prison. Don't worry about me defeating you. I read that you make everybody's pieces retreat until there's nothing for them to do but resign. I have 6.5 years to come out of this place. I've been here since 1997. When I was younger, I was living without good in my life, and I killed my best friend by playing with a loaded handgun, which went off and hit him and took his life. Every day, I wish I could bring him back. And it's just such powerful writing that you have. It's so simple and so direct. And if you could just tell us a little about writing that letter to Fiona and what your long-distance relationship was like with her.
Well, first of all, that letter was the beginning of a process of me trying to get my mind out of prison, because I was being confined to a cell at a time when, I think it was some sort of punitive segregation. And I had came across ESPN magazine, and I saw a little fancy metal shack, and I saw that there was a sports recreation center in Lynchburg, Virginia, that was helping children get into soccer. And then Phiona Mutesi, who was a chess player, they had sponsored her, and I decided, let me just write this address inside the ESPN magazine. I never thought I would get a response back. So 6 months later, I get a response, and I begin to start a game, which we actually never finished, through the mail. So the letter to her was actually initiated by her question to me about how does one remain a champion, when they're trying to pursue greatness. And I tried to explain to her that, if there's other parts of the letter that I was trying to explain, that if you follow a course of studying the errors of other people in relationship to chess, and maybe, other ways that it could help you pursue, your own championship status, your own greatness. And I was trying to explain that to her inside of that letter, along with being grateful that I was able to even be able to correspond with somebody so far away from where I was at the time, who was actually interested in what I was doing. And another thing that had also taken me back was how, when I read the magazine article on ESPN, it said it was very difficult for Fiona to even find, clean water, food, and, things like that. And I was like, wow, I'm amazed. How is it that you can hardly find, sustenance to survive, but you're able to play chess at, a level that brings this type of attention to you, when most people, they can't even find, time to learn how to play the game, much less play it well. So that kind of drew me, into reaching out to her, because I was so curious, how is this even possible? I've never heard of anything like this. And so that was the catalyst, that drew me into trying to connect with Fiona.
Just fascinating. And what you told her about what landed you in jail, it was just very moving, thinking every day, wishing you could bring your friend back. Have you been able to make peace with yourself over these years that you spent in prison?
I think I've come to accept that I can't change it. And I'm always remorseful and sorry for what happened. And as a part of, my reentry and my change of, lifestyle, I've come to do much more positive things. I've recently been offered an opportunity to teach chess as a volunteer to people who have some sort of like disabilities with concentration and, memory in Maiden Lane somewhere, like I think it's in Manhattan. I have to go to an interview on Monday or Tuesday. And so doing these things, I've tried to help humanity as a whole, see that I'm not the same person. I'm a better person. And, I would like to use chess to try to bring out the betterment of other people.
Yeah, you had mentioned to me earlier, one of the things you do when you teach others is you said you have like an anecdotal way of doing it, and you can compare chess, I don't know, is it moves? I don't play chess, to basketball or mechanics. Just tell us a little about how you make it accessible to people, or what your teaching style is with chess.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I actually had some I think some sophomore students from Hunter College come down to the forum, and they didn't know anything about chess. They wanted to know, what is it like? How do I play? And what is the strategy? What's the best piece? And, a lot of people come to this game with their own preconceived ideas and their own preconceived notions. And I like to think of it as, like you said, like a basketball game. So if you have two teams and one team is, let's say, a run and gun team, they like to run and shoot. And then you have another team that is very strong at defense. So you have two different styles, right? And the outcome is going to be determined by the person who's able to take their style and trump the other person's style. It doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It's just the advantage of difference, how you take those imbalances and make them, in your favor. And in chess, it's the same thing. So you start the game off with 32 pieces. You have 8 pawns, 2 knights, 2 bishops, 2 rooks, a king, and a queen. The other person on the other side of you, has the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. So if you start off with even material, then something has to change and shift in the process of interaction between those two people for one to become victorious. And what those things are the same imbalances that you find in a basketball game. Someone's faster, someone shoots the ball quicker, someone is paying more attention to defense, or someone has a little bit of a skill level that's more higher than the opponent, so they're able to use something that the other person isn't. Or in chess is like pattern recognition, and most of the games that I play on the clock, so that brings another element of psychological pressure into it. So a person may say, if I play fast, even though this other person doesn't have to play fast, they may mimic me, and that mimicry will cause them to make a mistake. So, it's experience, it's psychology, there's things in it that, cross, there's interdisciplinary aspects to chess that most of the time go unnoticed.
Yeah, it's a game that has intimidated me just watching people play it. Another thing that just seems fascinating about you is your religion. And I found online on a site called Beginning Mind, devoted to Buddhism for people that are in prison. And you had written an essay there as well. And I'd just like to read an excerpt of that, and then hope that you can talk to us a bit about how you found your religion in prison and what it's meant to you. You wrote, "Ever since I was a small child, I've put energy into asking questions. I wanted to know what made things work, and if you gave me a toy, I wanted to know how it functioned. My inquisitive adult mind wondered about the workings of human beings interacting with each other and the environment. The initial catalyst which compelled me to Zen practice and the Dharma was somewhat of an accident." And I'm hoping you can just tell us a little about that accident and how it unfolded. And I'll just read your ending thought in this essay, too, so people have this in mind as you're talking. It's the state of becoming aware in each moment that I equate with the meaning of beginning mind, the point of not resting or accepting a limit on anyone's capability to master the boundless Dharma. So tell us about that accident that happened that led you into Buddhism.
Well, let me see if I can recap. So, I was in Sing Sing, and a guy had walked past my living quarters, and he said, "Yo, I think you would be interested in coming down to, Buddhist services and, seeing how it is." So I'm like, the first thing I'm thinking of when I hear Buddhism is I'm thinking about, Channel 5, martial arts, masters, bald heads and robes. And I'm like, I pass. But then something just, I don't know how these things occur. Something just, got me curious, and he said it again. He said, I think you would like to come down. In a sense, because I never intended to go anywhere. I don't consider myself religious, and I thought Buddhism was more like a religion, but it's pretty much a philosophy of life, even though people call it that. So I go down, and it's just utterly quiet. People are sitting there, quiet, doing meditation, breathing, and then I started to notice that my senses. I started to actually notice my senses, like I'm hearing people's clothing move. I can hear breathing. I can hear things that I normally wouldn't be able to pay attention to when I'm distracted in my day-to-day everyday activities. And that made me wonder, like, if I'm missing out on these things with my senses, what else could I be missing out on? And that kind of like drew me into wanting to like delve more into the experience of human awareness, like, things that we think we're aware of and not, or things that we pay attention to and what don't we pay attention to and why. And so I began to practice doing meditation, after that period, first off and on, and then now more consistently. I actually go to Fire Lotus Temple in Brooklyn. I try to be there on Sundays, like every Sunday now, because I moved to the Bronx, so it's kind of difficult for me, but that's where I pretty much do my Zen training within a group of other Buddhist participants and practitioners. So that's like pretty much, speaks to how it was like an accident, but it was like a pretty good accident, I would call it.
Yeah, it sounds like you're able to take advantage of a moment and turn it into something else. Living in a cell and finding all these ways to reach outside of it, whether you're writing to Fiona or playing chess with Peter Henner or doing Buddhism where you can sort of get out of your confined physical space into like a larger mental space. I just wonder because there have been so many studies. You were for quite a while in what they call SHU, special housing units, right? Where it's almost like solitary confinement. And so many prisoners, when they get out, they have severe mental health problems. If you could just kind of talk to us a little about how you coped with that, how you managed not just to stay sane, but to sort of expand your world, even though you were so physically confined.
Wow, that one is that is a heavy question, and it's like a heavy load to even contemplate. I can't speak on it from an expert's position, but I can tell you that when I was in solitary confinement, I realized immediately that this was designed to try and break a person down. And when I mean say breaking down, I mean in subtle ways and in overt ways also. I mean, you have various things going on in there, from correction officers not giving people their food because they have some personal problem with maybe the person is talking too loud. They don't like the way they look. They don't like the way they smell. So they'll walk by you and they won't feed you. And, then there's yelling and screaming. There's people that, just don't have the desire to see another human being grow beyond suffering. So I noticed that. And then I just said, I don't want to be broken down. So what is it that I can do that is the opposite of what is trying to be done to me? And then I noticed that, the things that weren't present around me, there weren't positive people who wanted to play chess, but there were a few. There weren't always people who wanted to read and discuss things, but there were a few. So what I did was I took those few and I tried, when there was moments of silence and quiet, I would communicate with them and I would maybe play chess with them, because you could play chess there using a number system, or you would have to yell. Sometimes people would actually be quiet to hear the game because they would want to follow them in their cells when they really take the boards out of the game. So you would get an opportunity to play a chess game maybe in quiet because individuals wanted to follow it. And that would give me some respite from the chaos that may ensue if I didn't do that. And I just sat there and just, looked at my situation pitiful and said, you know what, this is not going to work. They had me here. I'm breaking down. And I fought. I mean, that's the key to it. I mean, I struggled against the odds to not be driven insane, because if you don't, I mean, there's like no standstill. You can't be in the middle. You're either going to disintegrate, right? Or you're going to redefine yourself in the presence of things that are trying to destroy you. And that's what I think, I kind of tried to do the best way that I could. And Buddhism helped me do that tremendously. One of the principles that Buddhism teaches is that form is emptiness, or in another, layman's terms to put it, is that nothing has any inherent quality to it. So it's pretty much your perspective, and how you view it determines how you react to it, how you behave in relationship to your circumstances, because you can look at them from so many different angles. And I tried to use the angle that was best suited, to keep me strong.
Wow. You're just, your words are so simple and powerful. So how long were you in prison altogether?
I entered the Department of Corrections in 1998, but I was arrested in 1997. So altogether, I was just released July 31st of this year. Altogether, 22 years of incarceration.
So how has it been going since you were released this summer? What has that transition been like for you?
It's funny that you mentioned this because I'm actually in a classroom at the Fortune Society, and today is the last day of my internship. So, I mean, I didn't lose my job by getting fired, but I did lose my job because they no longer need me anymore in terms of the intern. I mean, that was known from the inception, but I just didn't, I didn't know today was the last day. So, now I'm pretty much looking for work. So, and I'm living in a shelter, and I'm trying to make the best out of, what I can, with what I have. My autonomy is very important to me because it allows me to pursue my sanity, because I don't want to be tied down to a whole lot of, obligations that have nothing to do with growth and development. So I try and do things. I even, I go to the library periodically. I surround myself with, positive people. I look at the things that help people that are, recently re-entering society from incarceration to, move forward with their lives. And that's like that's a job in itself. I have various meetings with vested, and so on and so forth, looking into things like that. So,
this internship that just ended today, what did you do with that? What was that about?
Well, Fortune Society is a place that tries to provide people that are coming home with employment and job training. It's a very excellent program. However, they can't keep everybody, doing jobs forever because they have to make room for other people. So they provide various things like, receptionists at the desk, maintenance, food service upstairs. If you're into any IT stuff, they can pretty much try and find you a position there, but they're interns, which means it's 7 to 10 weeks. And if they decide to keep you, they can. But it's very unlikely that they will because they have their own staff here, so they have room for interns. What I was doing was maintenance, which, just requires certain skills like, you have to restack your bathroom with, like, toilet supplies, mop, sweep, clean, try and keep the place orderly, and disinfect, vacuum, take garbage out, so on and so forth. But that was something that was pretty much like trying to keep, actually helping me keep money in my pocket so that I could be able to, function on a day-to-day throughout society as I moved around. So now, with that, there's another challenge. So I'm looking for employment right now.
What kind of employment would you like to get if you could get, an ideal job for you? What would it be?
Well, I like talking to people, as I guess you can probably tell. But I would love to have an opportunity to interact with people in relationship to chess, which is what I love. And I also would like, I do photography, as you know. I take pictures with my phone. I'm not a master at that, but I have some pictures of like buildings that I've done.
Yeah, I like the perspective of the picture you sent me. You must have squatted down way low, and it was a huge, tall skyscraper with a blue sky above it. But it was just, your eye went right up that building. Yeah, and you also do art. You sent me some abstract art that you do. Tell us about that. What led you to do that? Very, very vibrant colors.
Yeah, I learned a little bit about color theory when I was in Fishkill in a program called Rehabilitation Through the Arts. I think it's run by Katwe, if I'm not mistaken. So, along with that little bit of, information that they gave me, I began to realize that my phone actually has a place where you can get colors and, like little markers and pencils. And most people think I did the stuff that I showed you with some sort of paintbrush, but when I tell them that it's a digital medium and I actually did it with my fingers, just my thumb moving across the screen and changing different angles and stuff like that, they kind of like almost don't believe it. But so I mean, it's just like I say, it's something that for me anyway, I don't know about other people, for me it happens in a way that's almost very difficult to explain rationally. It's like I have a feeling, I go to a color, and then I just, I try and do what the feeling drives me to do with that color on a canvas. And it's not something that is like, oh, this is a cow, or this is a building, or this is a face. It's more like, this is what I feel with this color. This is how my finger moves through this feeling with this color. And this is what happens. And, that's the results. So, but it gives me a feeling of connectedness to a medium outside of myself. Like I'm creating something. I've worked with pastels before, and it's like almost like meditation. It feels like, just you want to create. So it really doesn't matter if another person says, well, this doesn't look like a painting from Picasso. This is not. Well, okay, then get a Picasso painting. But I like what I'm doing because it makes me feel connected to something. So that's how I kind of like got into that medium.
Yeah. Well, Damion, this has been really great talking to you. Do you have any closing thoughts for our listeners to, close out our podcast?
Sure. I would like to tell anybody out there that's listening, if you have a desire, to do something and you feel like, it's really compelling you and it's something positive and you feel like you can help other people and you can't find a way to get people to see your vision, just do it. And then eventually someone else will come along and they'll say, wow, that's really amazing. And you never know what could happen from there.
I like your advice. I think it's good for anyone. So thank you.
Thank you.